Welcome back to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm Glenn Caruso, head football coach at the University of St. Thomas, and so happy you tuned in. My dad was the single greatest man I ever met. He used to tell me, Glenn, I'm not going to tell you how to be a man. I'm going to be a man. I'm going to let you watch me, and you're welcome. That always struck me very deeply. My dad never intended to try and make my path easy or smooth or devoid of any hurdles. He understood that very strain and struggle was part of the journey that's going to make every one of us into the person that we're intended to be. I would encourage everybody to think when they're leading people that our job is to prepare the child for the path and not the path for the child. And remember, if we're doing it right, we're coaching football for life.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Coach Torre Becton. Torre is the head athletic performance coach for football at Cal. Greetings, Torre. Thanks for joining us.
Ty, how you doing today, man? Glad to be here.
I'm doing great. I'm glad to finally have you on. Of course, I've known you for years, since the time we were both down at Baylor. You, among other strength coaches, saw benefit in joining the American Football Coaches Association, attending and speaking at the AFCA convention. So I've always appreciated our relationship and appreciated that you saw that benefit, A, to network with football coaches, but also to learn how to be better at what you do in terms of developing the young men that play the game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the time learning.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So now you spent time at Washington, USC, South Carolina State, Baylor, with the Houston Texans, among other places. And of course, you've been at Cal now starting your fourth season and in the strength and conditioning, athletic performance industry and profession for almost 20 years now. So I'd call that a seasoned vet, right? In terms of what you're doing, understanding, obviously, like you said, always learning. We're never perfect. We are always striving to be perfect. But we know if we get all the way to the top, the only place to go from there is down. So we're constantly learning how to get better. I have you on because, you know, you look at this global pandemic that we're all experiencing now, and you talk about student athletes coming back on campus. You're talking about not having a football season. You're talking about still making sure that athletes are A, around their teammates, B, staying in shape because they are athletes as well as students. And you have to make sure that they're doing the things necessary to keep them motivated, to keep them strong, keep them flexible, and keep them fast. I wonder about when student athletes come back to campus and you start training them, there has to be an aspect or a process of communications from medical personnel to administration at Cal, to you being the athletic performance coach, and how you set it all up to make sure everything is compliant with whatever structure is in place to make sure student athletes and coaches stay safe. Talk to me about that, A, communications process, and then B, do you have to take things and say, this is what we're going to do and get the okay for it? Or just talk to me about that whole process of training student athletes here in the pandemic.
Yeah, especially this year. The biggest thing, man, was before we even get to the workout aspect of it and continuing to train the athletes, the amount of preparation and setup for everything to be compliant or COVID compliant from an athletic department standpoint, as well as a Berkeley City perspective. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our grounds people, our athletic training staff, if I didn't mention our administration and the work that we all did to ensure that once we did get the green light to start up again, that we could have as I started saying to our football players, a negative COVID environment. We wanted to make sure that everything that we did for those 2 hours that we have the kids help maintain that negative COVID environment, from everyone entering a certain way in a certain place, to following certain arrows on the ground, to maintaining your distance, to setting up the workouts and the conditioning outside. One of the things that we did was, through research and communication, we decided that the best place to do everything that we needed to do to get our team to stay in a ready state was we needed to be outside. Studies have shown that your respiratory particles dissipate more quickly and they don't travel as far outside. So we wanted to make sure that we trained outside. So the athletic performance staff and myself, we unbolted 12 racks. We put some platforms on the bottom of them, and we put those 12 racks on our practice field. We moved up about 80,000 pounds of weights, bars, We put some mats down to mimic a platform and just to provide a service for our kids. When we mention and we speak about communication, there isn't anything that we can say that gives enough respect and admonishment to how our guys and how our staff really work towards this to make sure that we can train our athletes. And it was football at first, and now we're even starting to work back some of our other athletes. So everyone's able to train as best they can to keep themselves prepared and ready for their sport when sport does resume. And we know that sport is going to resume.
You talk about putting the weights on the practice field, putting the platforms, moving things. When you take a step back, the planning and preparation that you talked about, is there an aspect of, hey, when things are set up, you want to make sure things are this far apart? You want to make sure that when guys are moving, like you mentioned, the logistical flow of guys entering the workouts and how they exit the workouts, like how far back does that go, right? If you knew that athletes were coming at a certain time, how many meetings, how far back was that process, and how much talk and dialogue did it have to take before you knew exactly what direction you were going to go?
As far as talk and dialogue and Zoom meetings and phone calls go, it was significantly more than I'm comfortable with.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
But no, we actually way back in April, once everything, we all received the stay-at-home order back in March, I think March 13th, back in April, some of the team doctors and medical personnel in the Pac-12 created a task force consisting of athletic performance and strength coaches, athletic trainers, team doctors, and other various professionals in the field of epidemiology and whatnot. And we had a task force meeting every Thursday, Zoom call. And, there'd be 50 of us on this task force. And it was, hey, we don't know when we're going to play. We don't know what this thing is going to become. But what we want to do is we want to be out in front. We don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to whatever may come. We want to make sure that we at least give some brain power and some consideration to what could come down the pike in an effort for us to continue playing sport, playing football and whatnot. And additionally, obviously, the football staff meetings that I'm going to have with our coaching staff, the Zoom meetings that I would have with the athletic performance staff to make sure that we were able to do certain things and they know what the plan was, and the athletic trainer. So, when we were at our stay-at-home order, there were more meeting time than I've probably had in my entire career. So that was
Right.
really educational, and it was good for me. So, there's so much time and attention to detail and effort that had gone into even before we knew, like, hey, we're going to be able to play again at some point. Before we knew that, we just wanted to make sure that we got on the horn and we had kind of turned over every stone possible so that we could play out every scenario possible in an attempt to, again, as I say, maintain a negative COVID environment as best we could.
Is there an aspect of, you fast forward, you discuss how you want to set things up, and you start setting things up. And of course, the structure over there's an assistant athletics director for athletic performance and also a senior associate athletic director for performance, health, and welfare, which I imagine encompasses all medical personnel, athletic training, athletic performance, etc. Is there an aspect of, at some point, walking everyone through, here's what we're thinking, here's how we have this set up, here are the logistical flows, here's the process, and just seeing them either before or after you set up to, I guess, for the lack of a better word, get the okay that you're doing things right, and Cal make sure that they're doing things right up to the city level, up to the conference level, up to the national level, and those type of things.
Right. One of the really cool things about that is, as you stated, there's a multi-layered hierarchy or flow chart to where I'm the head athletic performance for football. So everything pertaining to football here from A to Z, I pretty much handle. And then we have an assistant AD who is the athletic performance administrator, and he deals with all the sports, and he's been an amazing resource for me. And then his supervisor is the senior associate AD for health, wellness, and performance. And the really cool thing about that flow chart is that we all have had to learn how to work together in a fashion that's more productive than anything else. The biggest thing is as the football athletic performance is not so much me telling them what to do, but it's also not them so much telling me what to do. It's, hey, this is our situation. This is what we have. This is what I'm thinking. What is the best way to move forward? Or are there any limitations to moving forward this way? So I can really appreciate the nature of our relationship. I can appreciate the nature of everyone being on the same page as far as trying to figure out what's the best way to serve our student athletes. So it's really unique and it's cool that way. Out of respect, I'll go to them and I'll ask some things. If, hey, I want to do this way, what do you guys think? And I think respectfully they say the same thing, like, hey, coach, we have this as a potential pitfall. Is this something that you could work around? So I can really appreciate the nature of how we do business and how we operate. Again,
how it's set up.
Yes, yeah, I can appreciate those things.
I wonder, and what you just mentioned, you asked, and they may say that we probably need to do it this way. Thinking about COVID-related setups, right, and training student athletes, has there been anything that you thought that you, based on the conversations you had, I think this is the best way we can do this in terms of safety, that you may have had to adjust over the last month or 3 weeks to a month as school became started, the kids came back, that you felt like you thought maybe, was the right way, but then you had to depend on somebody in terms of an educated position like a medical professional or those type of things to come in and make that adjustment for you so you can tweak it?
Yeah, so I think those points came in the form of exchanging information. In the meetings and the number of meetings we have and in the depth of those meetings, we all have an understanding of what I think is the best way to train a football team to be successful when it's time to play. Now, obviously, because of COVID and some of the considerations that we have to make, I wasn't able to train our football team since March the way that I thought was best to train them. So through exchanging information, that gave me an opportunity to adjust. These guys and young ladies here that I work very closely with, they understand that it's never going to be a pride thing. It's never going to be an ego thing. It's give me the parameters that I can work in and let me work. So what we do is we have information, or we have meetings, that they exchange, and we exchange information. They give information. I'll ask questions, or I'd give information about certain things that I feel are non-negotiable. And we work together to try to figure out the best way that we can do those things based on COVID protocols, based on what the city of Berkeley is willing to allow through their health office. So, for example, if we go into specifics, we have number requirements. We have a set number of people that we can have on the field at one time. That's players and coaches. Okay, that's just information that I need to adjust. We have spacing considerations on the field. That's something that my staff and I need to adjust around. That's fine. As long as we have the information, we can work. Kind of jokingly, but seriously, I talk to everyone about myself and my athletic performance staff being agents of adjustment. Ideally, we'd love to do it this way, but because we have some setbacks or we have some things that are out of our control, that doesn't mean that we can't operate, and we still have a job to do. We still have to be prepared to train our guys to play. If they told us, hey, football is on, camp starts in August, well, I can't go to anybody and say, well, I don't have the guys ready, because at the end of the day, I have to tell people why the guys are ready, in spite of.
This may sound silly, but is there a reference sheet? I mean, is there, can you log on and see all the requirements, spacing, like when you have to refer to something that has been discussed? Where is that? Is that information gathered somewhere? Talk to me about that part.
Hey, man, this is the University of California, Berkeley. There is 100% a checklist and 100 sets of eyes on everything that I'm doing here. There's a great deal of scrutiny on everything that goes on here at the University of California. But I can appreciate that pressure. I can appreciate the stress. I can appreciate the pressure. I can appreciate the everyone's mindfulness to be thorough and be detailed and be exact. This university takes a lot of pride in being groundbreaking and being at the forefront, not only in technology, but in some medical aspects as well. So I feel like I have a part of that. I have a 20 square foot part of that I control. And I'll do the best I can in my 20 square feet to make sure that we're always compliant and we're groundbreaking and able to be successful.
Right. And the benefit to that accountability is that you always have a reference to go back to. When you need to make a decision, when you need to make some adjustments, like you mentioned earlier, you have a reference to go back to because of Cal and how thorough they are in making sure things are on point. That's excellent.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think happens is that, unfortunately, you may have an incident happen or an event that happens, and maybe the athletic performance team doesn't know exactly what the proper protocols are here, and they kind of defer to medical, and it may slip through the cracks. But one of the things that I can say about what we do is, if there's an event that takes place or something that happens, Brendan Lambert and myself, he's our head football athletic trainer, we're able to get together immediately, and we're able to say, hey, this email came through and this is the event that happens. And he and I are able to coordinate and agree, well, you remember when we talked about this back in such and such, we can refer to the actual physical checklist of, okay, we know how to operate here. And I think what that does is it mitigates a great deal of potential injuries, pitfalls, whatever the case may be.
Right, yeah. So you think about football, right? Think about the football coach, and obviously I would imagine, right? You have a very tight relationship with the football coach because of the importance of what you do and the importance of what he does. When you talk about planning for the future, it's hard to plan. But for you, I guess your role, in addition to keeping the guys fast and athletic and in shape and accountable for each other, there's also a mental aspect of what you do in terms of long-term cohesive and motivation and mental health in terms of strength and conditioning. While it's an unofficial aspect of the job, you and I know going back years and years and years how important the strength and conditioning and athletic performance coach is to every athletic team on campus. Talk to me a little bit about that aspect when you talk about looking forward and helping guys to deal with the change in their lives that they're going through.
Yeah, one of the crazy things about this is, man, as I said this before, these kids did not come to college specifically to lift weights and run. So it became 100% the responsibility of my staff and I to ensure that these guys understood that from the very beginning, like, hey, everything that we do is to help you prepare for practice. I'm not one of those strength coaches or those athletic performance coaches that says, yeah, our guys can squat 600 pounds, so they're more physical football players. That's not where I put my emphasis. I put my emphasis on my guys' ability to be durable, for me to train them so that they can go out and practice physically and then recover and come back and do it again and recover and come back and do it again. And in my opinion, and in our head coach's opinion, that's what makes us a more physical football team, the ability to practice physically and recover from that practice. And what that does is it creates a certain callousness that once these guys are, at game time or at competition time, they're able to be as physical as they need to be and, keep the injuries at a lower clip, in my opinion. But yeah, we actually, that's one of the messages that we had to say to our team. Again, guys, I understand that this is challenging. We understand that this sucks right now. But what we have to do, what our obligation is and what our job and our duty is to stay ready. Is to stay ready so that whenever competition comes down the pike, whenever practice comes down the pike, whenever we get the green light to go, we're able to go. And I think, if you look at our track record and how we're progressing here at the University of California, I think that's one of the things that you see. Obviously, we're not perfect, and we don't expect ourselves to be perfect, but we're going to strive for that. We're going to challenge ourselves, and we're going to be ready all the time. We like to think that one of our hallmarks is that our guys are able to come out and be ready to go. So with this, with no football in sight, with us having, spring practice cut short, with us having uncertainty as it pertained to the season, even in my opinion, even the best teams in the nation, there still was a little bit of a mental drift that came. What are we working towards? And that's the importance of myself and my staff on some levels, is to be able to have these relationships with these kids. It's really awesome that, as a strength and conditioning professional, sometimes our job is to jump on these kids as hard as we can, as much as they can handle, and get them going in the right direction, because most of us needed it when we were their ages. But the new piece to it that I think that we're starting to become really, really good at is you jump on these kids hard and you correct them and you hold them accountable. But the harder we jump on these kids, the sooner we need to come back around and actually hug them and pat them on the head, be like, hey, man, this ain't personal. This ain't because I don't like you. I actually love you. But what I didn't like was that you weren't ready today. Or I don't like that you you didn't have attention to detail. I didn't like the lack of effort because I've seen you do better. So, we have to still be able to push these kids and challenge these kids and get the most out of them without damaging them, without creating an environment where they don't want to be here. They don't want to be around. How crazy would that be if we made these kids, You know what? I don't want to go to work out today. But kids are different these days. Times change, people change, and shame on me if I don't adjust with the times. So you know what? Whereas I was ended up playing football in the '90s, and coach had some choice words for me. I'll give you a quote. I'm gonna put you so far into the bench, you got to watch the game with a flashlight. Well, I got to figure out how to bounce back from that. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to browbeat our kids. We don't want to, beat them down to the point where they can't get back up, they can't recover, and we start taking love for the game away. What we want to do is we want them to enjoy training. We want them to enjoy the process. Like, hey, man, I tell them all the time, this stuff is going to suck. I'm not one of those coaches that says, ooh, this is going to be a surprise that we're going to spring on you today. I'll let them know what the challenge is for the day. This is where we're going to challenge you. This is where we're going to challenge you. It always starts with focus. It always starts with attention to details. It always starts with, your behaviors become your habits. So let's start doing that right now. Behavior become habits. Habits become culture. So let's make sure that we're doing those things the right way, and you won't have a problem with whatever the physical challenge is for the day.
All right. Right. You've been doing it here for almost 20 years now, Torre. I've seen you for at least 12 to 15 of those years, right? And I really appreciate
man, way back in 05, 04, 05?
Yeah, something like maybe even 03 when I first got to Baylor as a grad student.
Yeah,
actually.
we got there at the same time then.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Torre, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure the people at Cal appreciate what you bring in terms of helping the student athletes have an excellent experience there at Berkeley. And I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
No problem, man. I'm glad to finally have gotten a chance to get with you. And shame on us. I hadn't seen you since my wedding back in 2015, so we have to do better, man. But I really appreciate what you do for the business, for coaching in general, and I can't wait to get with you again and do another one of these.
That was Coach Torre Becton. He's the head athletic performance coach for football at Cal Berkeley. And, of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.